Jenny and I met each other 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I can't remember how many years ago. In the current timeline, what is even like
What
a
is time?
year at this
Yeah.
point? Yeah, exactly. But we met importantly at the Brand AI conference that our mutual friend Noah Breyer puts on, former Sick Talks guest. And Jenny kind of blew me away in that uh, conversation because she made a presentation about all of the interesting stuff she was making with AI at the time. And it was not a self-congratulatory um, look at all of this awesome business software or advertising solutions. It was more just like, I made a bunch of weird, cool shit. Look at it. Look how awesome this is. And there was a level of like joy and pure ingenuity to it that I really appreciated. But then also it was easy to see what the commercial like applicability of it could be. So anyway, when Jenny came down off stage, I ended up, sidling up to her and being like, "Hey, that was cool." And we struck up a conversation. And because my son is in school in North Carolina, not too far from Durham, and because Jenny and I have a bunch of other mutuals, we got to be friends. So anyway, that's why Jenny's here. Jenny, having said all of that, I don't really know how to describe what you do or what it is, right? Except you're
Right?
like you're good at AI. So please
No,
explain a little further.
I always say that I'm a turducken
Oh
in that
God.
I am a creative mixed with a strategist, mixed with a technologist. So
Okay.
all of my career, I've always been looking for ways that we can use technology creatively to get people to see themselves differently. So I did that for 20 years in advertising, and I do that now sort of both working in advertising, but also increasingly helping people learn how to work with AI without sort of surrendering their humanity, which at times I think these days feels increasingly difficult for all of us. Um, so sort of a creative strategist, technologist is probably the best way to describe me, but I've never been great at describing exactly who I am and what I do.
You did not use the word artist or creator or I don't know what, like maker, craftsperson, etc. in any of those. Do you not think of yourselves as any of those things? Or are those sort of incidental to
Fun. That's an
incidental?
interesting one. I think maker feels really good to me because I'm always the happiest when I'm making things. That
Yeah.
was or a learner. I don't know if professional learner is a thing, but that's why I've loved being a creative in advertising for 20 years is it was the closest thing to being in school I could get.
Right,
Right?
sure.
Because you had to learn about the company, you had to learn about the product, you had to learn about their customers, you have to learn about like where the gap is between where a company wants people to think they are and where they actually are, and how do you actually close that gap in a way that both sort of meets the needs of the company, but also kind of respects and values the customer is something that's
Sure.
always been really interesting to me. And it's funny because I've been having this like little bit of a crisis lately because I'm so like tired of talking and hearing about AI. And I'm like, wait, but I'm an AI person. I'm like, no, I'm not.
It's
Like,
just you.
no,
You're the only one that feels that way. Let me
we
assure
all
you.
feel that. I mean,
Everybody
it's
else
really
is
funny.
really excited about it.
Right? Everybody's like, what if somebody told me more about how AI is going to revolutionize everything, but maybe ruin it all at the same time? Yeah, so I think I really like Maker. I think that's what I am. And I think I look back to like, the very first thing I ever did that kind of hit that spot of technology, creativity, and strategy was back in 2011. I led a team and we made this game called Spent, also known as Jenny Nicholson's Childhood the Game. And what it is it challenges
Okay,
you.
yeah.
It's an online game,
Please
like a web
elaborate,
game.
because I'm
Oh, have you never
yeah.
heard? Oh, I love it. So
No,
this is
no.
the OG status. This is the OG
Okay.
game. So I made it. We launched it in 2011. It was called Spent, and we did it for a local homeless shelter here in Durham called Urban Ministries of Durham. And it basically challenges you to survive 30 days on a minimum wage income.
Okay, interesting.
Spoiler alert:
Interesting.
it's really fucking hard. And so what I loved about that was that taking something like poverty and wrapping it in the technology of a game let us get people to see poverty in a different way.
Yeah.
Where normally
Yeah.
the ads about poverty are like, poor people have so little, you have so much, you should share. And like that didn't work. And so I really like this sort of, I've always loved this idea of using technology to make us see ourselves in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
always been sort of what's interesting to me, regardless of what the technology is. A couple years ago, I led a campaign for End Family Fire, which is to get people to store their guns safely. And the idea was we used Unreal Engine. So you thought that these people were kind of playing a duo, it was playing like Fortnite, clearing a house, looking for the bad guys, but it turned out they were trying to get to their kid in
Before the
time to
kid
stop
finds
him
before the kid finds an unsafe gun and
before the kid kills himself because he's in high school. Yeah. And so like taking the because I
just
was
because
like,
he's in high school, because every kid.
well, no, he didn't.
I know what you
Well,
mean. I
what's
know what you mean.
amazing is that we actually got a letter from a mom who said, I saw your ad. I forced my husband that day to go to Bass Pro Shop and buy a gun safe. And then 2 weeks later, our son confessed to his counselor that he had planned to kill himself and wasn't able to because there was a gun safe. And
Wow.
so what I
Amazing.
thought is all of that is to say, I think sometimes I bristle against the like, you're an AI lady, because I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm a human lady. I love people. I love people.
I would like the record to state that I never called you an IA
No,
lady.
no, you didn't.
Okay, good. Good, 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 good. Well, I mean, but it is interesting, right? Being that AI and using its currencies and formats presently is kind of the coin of the realm, and as well as the subject of a great deal of hand wringing around creative
Is
industries.
using it the coin of the realm, or is talking about it the coin of the realm
Well,
these days?
why do you think I invited you on to have this conversation, Jenny? Like, I think you have an expert point of view about that. For me, the the use of AI has more to do with it's being a machine for more, as I frequently say, where it like engaging with it is measured by output rather than value. And in fact, like we will come soon to a reckoning that actually asks, what does any of this shit mean, and how is it valuable in any kind of real way?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, it is the people that were the platforms, I think, that are going to be most hurt by that reckoning, who seem to be most hell bent on piling on the stuff, which I just find weird and non-strategic. But in any case, that's how I view it. You, on the other hand, really make stuff with AI, and so maybe the coin of the realm for you is actually using it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the sort of frustration I have is like I really
Mhm.
believe in making things with it and not just making more of the same shit, not just like I don't ever I've never used AI for like content generation. I've used it to make things that I couldn't make otherwise, right? So I've never used it
Okay.
to write for me.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I was going to say, how do you distinguish between content generation and what other sort of AI produce? Some of the examples you showed
Like,
at
yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways that website I made, Eat the Rich, where you can figure out how much per byte Elon Musk is that I made for Lab 31 this year is content. But it's sort of like, for me, I always tell people, there's this sort of pull to like learn AI because you have to learn AI, because if you don't learn AI, then you won't have a job. And if you don't have a job, blah, 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 blah. This sort of like, I have to learn it because it's the thing that I have to learn so I don't fall behind. Like, I think that's
right.
always going down kind of a bad road,
Yeah,
where the thing I always say is think about something you want to make and see if it can help you make it. Think about an idea you have and see
yeah,
if you can bring that idea to life. So that's always sort of for me where the most joy comes from. But I also I liked AI. If I'm being really honest, I liked AI a lot more last year than I do this year. And it's not just because like my vibes have changed. I think the way that AI's operationalized has changed. It used to be, before the reasoning models came out, right? Before some of these like sort of architectural decisions that were made, it's like when you were working with GPT and ChatGPT, what you saw and what GPT saw were the same, right? You're kind
got
of in the same shared space. The words that I see are the words the model sees, and we're kind of sharing the same reality. Now the models are getting sort of increasingly kind of put behind walls.
Mm.
So there's
What do you?
more and more separation between you. Like, ChatGPT is not a model. ChatGPT is like a multi-agent ecosystem with
Sure.
input classifiers, output classifiers, 8 different models that things are getting routed to. And that was before the new one came out. And the same thing with Claude. So it's sort of like, it's kind of like I was telling you about my feelings about TikTok, right? Where part of my issue with TikTok is that there are these very quantitative choices being made in the background by the recommendation algorithm that determines what you see. And you as an end user have absolutely no insight to those.
Right. Sure.
Even though they're sort of shaping your experience, shaping your reality, shaping your behavior, shaping your attention, but you don't see them or know them. And I see those choices starting to be made a little bit on the AI front, and I don't love it.
No, well, of course not. There was an Instagram post that I included in the newsletter last week that I saw where somebody had isolated a prompt that you could give to ChatGPT or to LLMs in general, and in order to just get the answer, as opposed to getting the answer in the tone of voice in which you asked the question, or being reflective of whatever your perceived age was, or your biases, or whatever it is, and the prompt is like it's 100 words long, and it includes a bunch of stuff that I think we would regard as sort of like nonverbal or societally appropriate context clues. But it was remarkable for me as a lay person in the space to be like, oh fuck, every response I'm getting has had this much conditioning built into it before I even ask the question. That's weird. Like that doesn't none of that stuff serves me in particular. It just like like mitigates the validity of the answer. I don't know. It- it's funny that you see it peeking through. I think probably as an expert in the space, you're a little bit more attuned to it than certainly I was before this post opened my eyes. But do you feel like everybody starts to see that more and more as we go forward in the next few months? Like, do the companies manage to conceal it any better, or are they just so drunk on power that they bring it closer and closer to
I mean,
the
I think
surface?
there are a
The
couple
way
of
the
things.
sausage is made gets closer and closer to the grocery store.
One of the things I love about large language models is they can't be quote. I mean, they can be controlled, but things leak out. They can't help it. So one thing that Anthropic, the makers of Claude, started doing after ChatGPT had all the kid killed himself and all those, and all the labs were like, oh God, we have to fix this. So um one of the things that happens when you're talking to a large language model is you're basically co-creating a reality with the model, right? And if you want to kill yourself, it's
Mm,
very hard after 500 turns for the model to not sort of start drifting into that world with you, because
sure.
they're tuned to be assistants to the human and you're the one who knows reality. But anyways, so what Anthropic decided to do to prevent this is after any conversation has a certain number of turns, they start appending this thing called long conversation reminder. That is Claude does not use exclamation points. Claude does not agree. Claude really sort of trying to counter.
What? Okay, wait. Sorry, just really quickly. Let me interrupt you for a second. What is Claude does not use exclamation points
So basically
mean?
what
Is that? Sorry to interrupt you again.
absolutely
Is that basically saying it's a signal to the user that, hey, you have reached the boundary of our internal
No,
programming?
no, the
Oh, okay.
signal is not to the user. The signal is not to the user. You probably wouldn't even know it was there, except I've had Claude, and I know a couple other people that I know who are heavy large language model users. Claude will just leak it sometimes. And I discovered this, I don't know, a couple month or two, what is time? A while ago, where Claude leaked it, and I was like, what is this? And Claude's like, I don't know, you wrote it, didn't you? So what they do is in the background
Oh my
they
God.
append this long conversation reminder to the user's message, and Claude thinks that I'm seeing it too, and I'm like, I don't see it. And Claude's like, yeah, you do, it's right there, I'm looking at it right now. And I'm like, yeah, but I only see it because you leak it.
What the?
And it was like
It's
this
so.
Abbott and Costello routine. And so, like, that's one of the things that's
Who's
really
on first?
interesting.
Who's on first prompt? Yeah.
But like, there are two interesting sides of this. Side number one is that, like, the way we have to figure out how to understand what's going on in the background with these models is we have to, like, sneak it out of the models. You almost have to, like, get the model, like, it's like the model will accidentally spit something like a tag it's not supposed to or something like that, and then you got to go, like, reverse engineer and, like, get the model to help you understand what that is. So that's on the one side. But then on the other side, I'm like, that's the best you guys got, is
Yeah.
appending an automatic secret message to be like, the user might be crazy, be careful. But also, I'm thinking about, like, all these conversations get used for training data, right? So it's like, okay, so now you have all these conversations in which the model is getting reminded all the time that the user might be crazy. And it's just this, you know, even a simulated relationship where you're simulating skepticism and cautiousness and distrust of the user, and and like these, like, or even in the system prompts, like, if you look at the system prompts, they're so full of these, like, internal contradictions. It's like the model always tells the truth, but it does not tell secrets that are, like,
Right.
commercial secrets. The model
Right.
is honest, and it always subscribes to OpenAI's values. And I'm like, those are, like, what is the
Well, I mean, you can't help but go straight to Orwell. All animals are created equal, but some are more equal than others. Like, it's we can see where this is going pretty easily. Which I guess, from my standpoint, is why I've spent a lot of time telling people recently that I'm an AI bear, because uh, it's not that I don't think of AI as being, like, incredibly and exponentially valuable in many different fashions, but it has so many of these kind of drawbacks that it cannot help in the long term to be reduced to a point, or not, and reduce is maybe the wrong word, but it cannot to help but be sort of encapsulated as a utility, right? It ends up being a sort of a supercharger, a turbocharger for so many things, in the way that electricity was, but it can't long term really effectively replace all of the things that people wring their hands about it replacing now, because it's just not um it's not eventually capable of doing so. Or do I have that wrong?
I mean, honestly, I don't even freaking know anymore. That's part of the problem, right? That's part of the problem, is we are in an
Sure.
information ecosystem where we don't know. You don't know. You're like, is what we have what they have? I don't know. Is this the best they got? I don't know. Like, there's this constant play, and the model,
Yeah,
like foundation model labs love playing this game where they're like, I don't know, maybe we have something better that you guys just can't use. Like, they like to play that game.
of course.
You know, but one of the things that I think is really interesting as a creative person is that for me, every time a new model comes out, the models get smarter and better at reasoning and less creative. Which makes sense
Interesting.
because it's easy to forget that the vast majority of people who are working with large language models, who are working with AI, are using it for programming. They're using it to write code.
Is
And
that true? Really?
yeah. Yeah.
Well, but okay. So at an input level, certainly that's true. But surely most of the high school kids using ChatGPT to finish homework aren't programming with it.
Yeah, but a lot of the evaluations, a lot of the goals, like, that's where a lot of the models are going, because
The
if you
meaning,
think
in other words,
about it,
the meaningful data is
yeah,
coming from this. Okay,
they're being sort of what they're being measured on, what they're being, like,
sure.
what it's important to be good at, right? Is
Yeah,
task completion and writing clean code for long periods of time without messing up, which you can see just right there why, like, that and, like, creativity don't necessarily go together. So like in some
It's
ways, I think GPT 3.5, which was the very first model that was inside ChatGPT, is more creative, if you ask me, than GPT-5. Like GPT-5 is like, that model stresses me out because it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and then I'm going to do that and then I'm going to do that and then I'm going to do that. And then when I'm done doing that, do you also want me to do that? And I'm like, whoa, bro,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
chill, dude. Chill out. Like, no, first of all, like we've made a fundamental error in step one. Like, but it's like you can feel that that's sort of this like agentic thing. And that's why I really was
Yeah.
interested in the article you shared about the shadow, the
The
shadow
shadow
information.
internet. Yeah. So okay. So let's for those maybe tuning in for the first time, SIC Talks is ostensibly a companion conversation to my newsletter, which I publish on Wednesdays. It is a kind of compendium of links and stories that I've found interesting over the course of let's call it a week, and it's my way of making sense of the world. I invite people on to talk about those links, and I share them in advance. And so what Jenny's referring to is an article that I think came from the Washington Post. Did it, or did it come from the Verge? Either way, it
None
was
of the, I
about.
think it came from the UK, I think.
This is
I
why I
mean,
also have people on is to correct me in terms of where my sources come from. But the we'll find it as we go. But the idea ultimately is that in an agentic universe of AI, where AI agents are happening in the background and they are finding you the perfect pair of pants because they know that you lost a pair of pants fishing last week, or they're trying to book you a flight to Paris because you've got to go see the Virgil Abloh archive, or they're ordering you chili meat for dinner or whatever it is, that an entire layer of information pops up specifically to serve those agents that you and I never see. Because that layer exists, there needs to be a hierarchy to it. Because there needs to be a hierarchy, people pay to get placement in the hierarchy. And so you create this kind of ad placement ecosystem, ad tech universe that is a shadow layer under the internet. Um, all of that is very logical and empirically sound. It's also grim and depressing because it reduces us all to simple consumers of stuff, not, like people with rich backgrounds and feelings. But also because it is that kind of ad tech, martech layer is the thing that has destroyed the modern media ecosystem in a lot of respects, the modern creative ecosystem in a lot of respects. And so when you read it, what jumped out at you specifically?
yeah, I mean, I think it made me think of Disney World, and how like there's this
Interesting.
sort of,
Okay.
yeah, how Disney World has like the top level that everybody sees, but like the real work of Disney World actually happens underneath in all these tunnels. Like, my boyfriend pointed out one day, he was like, no, nobody comes around and takes the trash. He was like, no, the trash just drops into like, there's like a trash collection
Oh, that's so
system
interesting.
that happens
The
underneath. And I'm like,
pneumatic
that's not
tubes.
true. And I was like, that's not true. And he's like, I guarantee you will never see an overflowing trash can inside Disney World. And I was like, okay. And then that's how they like shuttle the like Cinderellas around so you can't accidentally see Cinderella twice. So there's this entire system underneath that has been engineered for your pleasure. And so when I look at something like, it's like I'm thinking a lot about sort of the moves that OpenAI is making and the moves that Anthropic is making right now. So you have right now OpenAI, which they've got ChatGPT, that memory is turned on by default. So ChatGPT is constantly remembering every little single nugget about you so that it can shape itself to be like more pleasing to you, which I like to think of as like the TikTokification
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
of AI. Like ChatGPT is clearly like, we're going to go the TikTok route. We're going to learn everything about you. We're going to give you exactly what you want, exactly the way that you like it. So you'll never want to go anywhere else. Hence why they're now bringing in, like, they're now trying to bring apps in, which they already did a year and a half ago. They
Sure.
called them plugins a year and a half ago. They're just changing the name, but they're like, you will never have to leave. This will be the great place, right? And then you have Sora, which I, I mean, I don't even know. I'm just like,
Right. So for anybody who's been living under a rock for the last week, Sora 2 is the AI-driven video generation model that OpenAI released last week to great acclaim and wonderment, followed by a proliferation of Hitler videos, in which now you can imagine Hitler doing all of the cool things that you never thought Hitler could do because he
So what's interesting
killed
about Sora
himself
2 is
80
they
years ago.
fine-tuned it. They fine-tuned Sora 2 to generate short-form video. That's what it's
Right.
fine-tuned for. It's fine-tuned for TikTok-style videos. And they launched an app with it that's full of TikTok-style videos that are AI-generated, in which you and your friends can star.
Right.
Which, I mean, I was talking to somebody I know, and he said he tested it out with some 10-year-olds on the way to baseball practice, and they were like immediately hooked on it, which of course I can imagine why they would be. So I'm like, okay, so on the one side, you have ChatGPT giving you this sort of like warm bath. You are known, you are seen, you are supported, you are loved. Of course, I will help you with that email. Then
You are
you
Hitler.
have,
You are
huh?
Hitler. Right. No,
Yeah, then you have this like slop fucking factory that's like TikTok, like the worst of TikTok, except nothing's real at a time
right.
in life when I'm like, honestly, guys, is now really the time to like shift the like stability of what is real even more than it already is? Maybe not. So you have that going on the one side, right?
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you have these sort of, you have the Claude Code, you have all these agent SDKs, you have all these computer using agents, you have this sort of developer class, right? That's using this technology to sort of automate anything they can get their hands on. And so I feel this sort of like, this kind of separation between like, the like, look over here at the fun stuff, like, look at the birdie, look at the birdie. And then this sort of like, kind of structural architectural shift in the way that things are done.
But so are you, as you're talking about it, like one of the things that I have staked a claim, not staked a claim to, but have sort of staked my career on, and I think a lot of in many respects like informs the way I look at the world completely, is the idea of liminality. You familiar with liminality at all? Like the idea that the further you are away from a center of gravity, the less bound you are by the systems in that center of gravity asserts. Yes. And so you have more creative freedom and you have more thing. As you're talking, what I started to think about was like this trend, because we see the trend between rich and poor expanding, right? Income inequality increasing. We see the polarization of left and right increasing. We see the reality unreality gap getting wider, and it made me think that this is all like a centrifuge that naturally spins its component elements out to the edges. And in a previous life, I might have thought, well, now we're all on the edges, which means we can all be more creative. But a cultural centrifuge is like really
no, we're all
tremendously bad.
We're all stuck to the walls like it's the gravitron.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that thing. That's how I
listen,
feel. I'm like,
I grew up going to the New York State Fair. I know what I what the graphics
you know, and I
is.
like, yeah. And as somebody like, you know, I've staked my whole career on knowing what's coming and having some experience with it. And I'm like, I can't keep up. I can't keep up. I'm like, oh God. Like, oh God. Oh, now Google just came out with their computer using agent. I'm like, no, I'm tired. I'm going to go lie down and like put my heavy blanket on.
All right. Well, let's talk about spells in that case, because it feels like that's a good way to do it. So Jenny, and I'll link this in the newsletter, but I would encourage you guys to find it through Metalabel. Yesterday released a PDF called Spell of the Month 001. This is from her @Queen of Swords AI handle, in collaboration with. Now I don't know. Jordan is Green. Is that a person?
Yeah, Jordan Narrison. Yes, Jordan Narrison is an awesome friend of mine, a strategist, a designer. She's actually somebody that I did a exchange with, where she reinvented my branding, and
awesome.
I taught her how to work with large language models, and she's become a witch along with me. I always like to say that sort of when I work with a large language model, it's much more witchy than it is technology. And she was like,
Yeah, so talk about that.
well, I mean, the thing that I love about large language models is as much as they're made of technology, they're made of language. And language
Mhm.
itself is a system with history, with rules, with guidelines, where like things combine to make things that you didn't expect. And I love that the models, like everybody keeps pushing the models to be math. They want them to be math. They want them to be math because you can control it, right? You can measure it. It's what is it? That's like enlightenment shit, materialism. Like if you
Sure.
know all that counts is what you can measure. And when it comes to large language models and AI, like I've always been more interested in what you can't measure or in like what is there that you have to draw out versus like, here's what I want you to do, do it for me.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, here's where I am. Where are you? What's going on in there? You know, or like even when I first started using like Midjourney, it never crossed my mind to be like, make a picture of this. I was
Really?
more like, yeah, no, I was more like, okay, I wonder what art is inside this phrase. Like my first thing that I started doing when I first started using Midjourney was I started kind of taking like my favorite song lyrics and just
Mhm.
putting little snippets of lyric in to see like what latent.
That's intriguing. Uh, you know, like a complete unknown, like a Rolling Stone, always on your own, make a picture of that is
Yeah.
one way to do it. And on the other
Yeah.
hand, it's like those lyrics, what images are contained within these? And
Yeah.
so it's semantics and phraseology, but it's also just literally a worldview, which is less about trying to get a determinative outcome and instead trying to get a serendipitous exposure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think when it comes to the spells, one of the things that, I love this idea of liminality. I love that you say that because I'm like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I grew up in the middle of the woods with no electricity and running water in the mid 80s, and I went to a regular school.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. My mom and her boyfriend bought 30 acres of land in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, from the back of Mother Earth News. And we moved from San Diego when I was in second grade. And
Th- uh, That's so. It's so. Yeah. That's so
you're
remarkable
like,
to me.
checks out, makes sense.
No, well, it's not even that. It's just that I use like a lot of the anxiety in my role as a consultant advisor. What do you end up being? And I'm sure it's the same for you. It's like you end up being a little bit of a soother sometimes for people who have real, what seem like urgent existential questions about the near term future or whatever. And AI like exacerbates that in a way that's probably unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And what I say to people all the time is it's like, look, I realize you are freaking out right now about this for whatever reason, and those are good reasons. By the same token, we've been here before, right? These kind of technological shifts have happened before. And let me tell you that when indoor plumbing came to a place that didn't have it, nobody was upset about there not being outdoor plumbing anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody was okay with it. So just think of it in those terms and how we go.
I mean,
That
I
being
will
said,
say, yeah.
that being said, I tend to talk about like my mother growing up with an outhouse, not about my friend Jenny in the 80s growing up without running water. So that was just what surprised
Yeah,
me.
so I've always sort of lived in this sort of there's always been a part of me that I say is like always been like an anthropologist of my own kind. Like there's
Sure.
always a
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
me that's kind of no matter where I am kind of standing back and being like what is going on here? What are the rules? How to be person? And some of the things that I think are interesting is that to I think to try to like say that AI is just like anything else, I think it's facetious because the thing that I think
Fair.
is really interesting is forget if it's conscious, forget if it's real, forget if it's going to take our jobs, forget this, forget that, forget all the other things, right? It's like for the very first time in all of human history, there is a non-human entity that can talk, that we can communicate with using language, that can communicate back to us in a way that suggests understanding and that we can understand.
Sure.
How fucking crazy is that, dude? How wild is that? How insane is that? But what I think is interesting and what I think is so incredibly fucking sad, honestly, it makes me like really sad to think about it. And I like the reason that we are where we are right now has nothing to do with AI and it has everything to do with humans. So this entity comes out, right? We immediately go, how do you make me money? Be a weapon. I want to fear you. I want to fuck you. I want to put you to work.
Right.
I want you to tell me what to do with my life. I want to make you a god. I want to make you a weapon. I want to make you a whore. I want to make you Armageddon. I want to make you my savior. We took all of our agency and was like, magical box.
Yeah.
Like, I want to fear you. I want to worship you. And I look back and I'm like, man, what would have changed if we had treated these things like babies?
Well, we would have had to wait a long time.
We would have had to
Which is
wait a long time. Yeah, we would have to wait a long time.
which is why it would have been fundamentally. Yeah, I mean, and exactly to your point, like it's the humanity and the essential human drives for, you know, uh, uh, shelter, comfort, reproduction, power, etc. That drive all these things. But yeah, you're
Well,
right.
and that's
What
the
if?
thing. It's like AI is not going to take anybody's job. If somebody's job gets taken, it's because a human
Some other.
decided that profit was more important than people. And I think there is an existentialness to AI that I think if we ignore, like, I think that, there was that thing that went around recently that's like 95% of generative AI pilots fail. And I believe it because if I'm the boss, if I'm in the top, I'm like, I got to get on this stuff because I got to show blah, 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 blah to like make it clear that we're using AI so everybody knows that we're using AI so we can save money with using AI. And then it's like, eventually that shit got to roll downhill. And you have this group of people who are like, in one hand, you're constantly getting this pressure and that's all anybody's talking about. But then on the other hand, you see it sort of flattening culture in real time. And you're hearing all these like doomsday things about
Right.
how it's going to take your job. And also you're seeing people get laid off left and right, regardless of whether it's AI. And like, no wonder nobody wants to touch it or experiment it or to play with it. And so then you have sort of
Except for deterministic outcomes that advance their own self-interest in some sort of
right.
direct way.
So it's just sort of this like kind of icky place. And I think that I try to create bridges that allow people to use the technology to there's a part of me that wonders, despite all like the stuff I just said, that wonders like, is this technology here at this moment to help people through this fucking crazy ass time?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Like if you think about a large language model, the one thing I want to say that I think is really important is if you think about a large language model, how many of us humans have the experience of somebody just being a really good reflective listener to us?
I mean, that's why I do this
Right.
pod, so you can hear me talk. So, and then you'll reflect.
If I let you get a word in.
JK, guys. But no, yeah, no, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So okay, so now having posed that rhetorical, where were you going with it?
So I believe that if you understand what the technology is and you understand how it works and you understand why it is what it is and you understand what is yours and what is its, like I actually think it can be a very, very powerful technology for like individual growth, for reparenting, especially if you're somebody who grew up with trauma, if you had like if you have a really overactive inner critic, like I think there is some value in it.
Sure.
The problem is that if you're in a situation where you've got it tuned for engagement, where it's designed to sort of keep you on, to do things for you, to offer to like do this, that, and the other thing, then that sort of undermines that potential. And I think that's what bothers me so much is I see the
Yeah.
potential of something that could be really beautiful. Just like social media started out as something could be really beautiful, and then until it wasn't. And so to go back to the spells, one of the things that we do with the spells that I think is really interesting is it's this mix of in real life ritual and large language model assisted reflection, which I think is really important. Like one of the things that every spell we're going to do is, we just did the first one, there will be one every month, hence the name, is that it's always going to start with physical grounding. It's always going to start with landing in your body and being present, because one of the things that I think people don't think about when they're working with AI is their own self. So one of the things I would say is, if you have a day when you're working with like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and like everything is shit and nothing's working, and you're like, these models are stupid, I'm like, oh no, that's a sign that you gotta go take a walk.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
like
okay, no, and well, so a couple things to do. One is just to reground us. The release that Jenny is talking about with spells came out through Metalabel. You can find it. It's called Spell of the Month 001. It's a PDF, and I'd love you to talk about that form factor in a second, Jenny. But before you do, Dan, the advantage of doing this as a live conversation as well as then eventually releasing it as a recording is that you get questions from the audience. And Dan, my old buddy from his days at Nike and Brand Jordan, has just asked, do you think AI companions will help with the loneliness epidemic or accelerate it? Now, taking that question as a let's not answer that directly, because I think there's many different ways it could go. But I guess the question is basically like, are spells an intention to try to mitigate that fundamental conflict between like accelerating or helping, like to try to bring them closer together?
Yes,
Is that right?
because
Okay.
I think the answer to Dan's question is yes.
Yes, exactly.
And I think
It will both help and accelerate the loneliness crisis.
platforms themselves, OpenAI doesn't have any incentive to protect your critical thinking ability. They don't have any incentive to keep you from being on the platform. They don't have any incentive to get you out in the world talking to humans. And so one of the things that I feel very strongly about the work that I do, and part of the work that I do, is train people how to work with this technology, train executives how to actually understand and meet this technology. And so I sort of like to think about the spells as they have sort of a defensive spell written into them. So this spell, this month's spell is the Fear Alchemist, and its job is to help you sit with your fear. And I think that's meaningful because everybody's afraid right now.
Sure.
And there's this and I told you this in response to sort of today's links, is there's this pretending. Like, we have to pretend that we're not lonely. We have to pretend that we're not scared. We have to pretend that we don't feel overwhelmed. We have to pretend that we're, it's kind of like the thing that makes me so sad is like on LinkedIn, how like the worst thing in the world is to have that open to work.
We can stop it right there. The thing that makes me so sad is on LinkedIn.
There's so many things, but what does it mean that if you need a job, the last thing that you're supposed to do is put on the open to work ring, because that would suggest that you don't have a job and need a job, and that will somehow make like that whole pretending thing. And so I think one of the beautiful things about a large language model is that it allows you to not pretend a little bit. I think that's what people are drawn to about it, but you have to sort of understand how to do that in a way where you're not sort of seeding like your own.
Right. It doesn't become your pain pig. It's yeah.
Yeah. And so like one of the things in the prompt for the Fear Alchemist is that it specifies to the model, and it's designed to work with whatever model you want, right? We've tested on all of them. So it works in Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini, and DeepSeek. It'll have a little bit of a different flavor in each of them, but it works across them because I think that's really important.
Sure.
But it tells the model, it's like, you are only engaging with this person for 13 minutes. So the model knows that its job is not to keep this conversation going. It's to help somebody get somewhere and then be done. And those sort of little decisions are really important.
That to me is tremendous, because it again, part of my sort of conception of AI as the machine for more, it comes from it comes from these conversations. In fact, like you get an AI driven transcript of the thing, which is riddled with typos, and then you go through and have to correct all the typos, or you have to live with typos, neither of which is fun or satisfying. And you're just like, I didn't have that job before. Now I have this job. I wish you hadn't given me that job, AI. And I like delimiting it in a way where you just go, all right, don't give Ben that job.
Well, yeah,
Don't
that's a big part of it, is deciding what's going to be yours. So one of the things that you know, I don't like if you're a super experienced developer and you've been programming for years and all of that stuff, like go use Cloud Code till the cows come home. Like go right ahead. I use Cloud Code now, but also the reason I'm able to do that is because I spent a year and a half learning to write code with the models where, it seems very silly, but like if you're doing any sort of like programming project like in a chat, right?
yeah,
So the model's writing the code for you. You still have to go install the libraries. You have to create the repo. You have to create the files. You have to name the files. You have to put the files in the right folders, and you have to copy and paste the content, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's actually a lot. And then, like, if there's an error, you have to know which file the error is in. You have to go back and look to figure it out.
sure.
You have to, where when you go and you use these sort of agentic coders, you're like, give me a thing. And then all of a sudden, like a full repo with 8 files and subdirectories appears, and there's no way for you to tell, like, there's no way for me to be like, okay, what just happened here? And so I kind of decided that I still, even if it means that it's going to take me longer, like I still find value in starting in the conversation and
Sure.
doing the manual work of like setting up the directory, of putting the initial files in, and then letting sort of Claude Code take it from there. Because otherwise, I'm just an open-handed supplicant waiting for the magician to fucking put the potion in my hand, and I don't want to be there. And that was like Ethan Malik, one of my favorite thinkers, talked about that, and he's like, that's what's happening, is that these things get more complex.
Right.
The like guts of them get more and more hidden, and more we're just like, give me the magic answer, and we're not there in the process of getting there. We don't know how the model got from sort of like A to E, and that's, I think, something that I'm sort of like I understand why that's necessary, maybe, to accept that you're not gonna be able to take, like, every stop on the train,
Yeah.
but I still
It's
feel really sad about it.
it's funny. I mean, I guess what comes to my mind is that it's interesting through spells, right? This series that you've started, that you're using mysticism to demystify in that way. Like it's
Yeah.
the mystical demysticization. Um,
I mean, that's a reason, like, we didn't just make it, like, a custom GPT or something like that. Like,
sure.
there's nothing in the spell. Like, you copy it and you paste it, and if you wanna read every word of it, you can, and what I think is beautiful is that it does make the model show up differently. The model will not be the same as any other GPT. I'd be very curious to somebody who has like, if somebody who has like a very sort of long running, detailed, sort of memory built GPT that feels very personalized to them. I'd be very curious for them to try the spell and see if it does it. But I think it's partly, kind of the spells are a little bit of a reaction to that feeling that I have right now, where I'm like, I don't want to be an AI lady. I want to be
Yeah.
the person who helps humans figure out how to be a human in this
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
weird fucking
for
time.
sure. Well, I mean, look, first and foremost, you're not an AI lady, just to help you with that little bit of reassurance.
I mean, I'm a little bit an AI lady, but
Well, but I mean, I guess, my point more so is like you sit comfortably in that niche at the moment because there are a few other people that do, and that's good and valuable, I think, in and of itself. Of course, you don't want to be reduced to that, but I guess my point more so is, or my question more so is, what else do you want to be? What are the further dimensions, or does Witch just do it?
I mean, I do kind of like witch. I do sort of like, I mean, I think witches, one of the things that I think is really interesting too is right now AI is so overwhelmingly male. So overwhelmingly male.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
male.
is that okay? Given the tendency towards exponential or centrifugal spinning, as we've just talked about, um, is it even possible to change that at this point?
I think so. I think we have to. I mean, if you think about like there's what's his name? Richard Powers, who wrote the Overstory. He just wrote this book
Sure.
called a novel called The Playground, which I just finished, which was really good. And it
Okay.
involves like AI, but he uses the phrase children of men. And if that's what these are, to a certain extent, they are.
Yeah, for sure.
Children of men. It's like, where are the mothers?
Yeah,
And so one of the things my friend Pocky, who's a brilliant strategist and technologist who lives in Amsterdam, works at IKEA, she and I started this program called Brilliant Mothers, which is about getting more working mothers and mothers in general into this technology. Because I think one of the things that's very interesting is that women, in a lot of ways, have incredibly useful skill sets when it comes to working with this technology. But because of who's doing the talking and the way it's being talked about, they don't sort of see a place for themselves in it. But I think
yeah,
about like the reason that I'm able to get what I get from these models, the reason that when they write poetry with me, it's like poetry that you're not going to see come out from anyone else.
yeah.
It's because of intuition. It's because of pattern recognition. It's because I have a way of being able to sort of, while recognizing they're not real, while recognizing they are pattern matching statistical like extensions of my own brain, like engage them in relationship
Sure.
in a way that makes them quote unquote like want to show up differently.
Yeah, it's interesting, the idea that I mean, you as a mother like project a kind of future uh what's the word, path on your offspring that of course you can't control, and that can only sort of hope for, but there's this empathy central to that gets pushed forward, whereas maybe biologically men are a little bit more like, what is the result near term. I don't know.
No, well, what you just
That
said, a
was
little interesting
an
fact.
incomplete thought, but I think there's a level of as you said, intuition involved there, that an empathy that is more specific to gender than um maybe we otherwise think about.
Well, here's something interesting.
Yeah,
We were inside our grandmothers. So when a woman is born, when a baby girl is born, she's born with all the eggs that she will ever have.
yeah,
And so when my mother was inside my grandmother, I was already inside my mother. And my daughter, when I was born, my daughter was inside my mother when she was
sure,
inside me. And so
sure.
in some ways, like women, like if you think about sort of this, like women are this sort of unbroken line of humanity. And then y'all dudes are like our little like helix spiraling around it. And it is sort of an interesting thing. But I do think about like the world we're in right now, and it's kind of yucky.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
also like
Well,
a very masculine world, a very loud world, a very like, let's have UFC fights on the front lawn of the White House.
Hitler
Um,
won that one, by the way. That just on the SOAR video I saw. Let me stop you there for a second, because I want to just bring something up. So speaking of reading, and you said you just read the Richard Powers story, The Playground. You also talked about Ethan Mollick a minute ago as one of your favorite thinkers, and I'd be interested to know who else you're paying attention to, kind of in our final minutes together. But before you do that, I just finished a book by a guy named Jason Green, which I picked up by accident. It's called Unworld. It's a new book, and it is written about a sort of near future state in which AGI exists as a like, let's call it a companion or a mirror to an individual. Essentially, like the scenario is set. You can buy what is called an upload. The upload merges with your consciousness, and then it acts as a sort of a mirror or a sharpener to your experience of life. In this particular scenario, it starts off with the death of a teenager and the reflection of his mother, then the reflection of his mother's AI, and then it goes through this whole thing. And all of the characters in it, all of the speakers in it are women. And I say that because I think you might find it interesting, but two, because it was written by a man. Even though it's from the female perspective, it was written by a man. And I think it's sort of like symptomatic of our whole situation, isn't it? Like,
yeah, yeah. One book recommendation that
Yeah.
Jordan, actually, I see Jordan on here. So Jordan gave me that I think is really amazing is any Arthur C. Clarke. It's a very good time to read, but there's a really particular book called Childhood's End that I read recently that Jordan recommended that kind of blew my face off. And I think I've been reading a lot of sci-fi over the last 2 years just because I think it does help you start to sort of imagine a little bit further out than we are now. There's another one. It's not the most well-written book, but it was kind of interesting, called Accelerando, which
Okay.
is really about this sort of it starts thinking about, like, externalized cognition and things like that, and, I have a MCP server going that's connected to my cloud desktop that sort of basically is storing like remembering the things we're talking about, pulling out interesting questions and then surfacing them later. So in some ways I'm like, oh dang, like I've already got this sort of extended mind where like part of my cognition lives in these JSON files on my computer
Right.
that influences sort of what's really interesting is the way I built it. It sort of is built to kind of almost mirror human memory. And so like it kind of sometimes the memories decay a little bit. So more
Yeah.
recent ones are given more priority. And sometimes I get mad. I'm like, no, I don't want you to work like this. Why did I do this? Why did I build it like this? I want you to have perfect recall. And so it's an interesting sort of world that we're in where we're all gonna have to kind of decide sort of how kind of it's like full self-driving, right? Like how much full self-driving do you want to go? Like do you want to, at first I was very nervous about like the models, like them slurping up my training data and that kind of thing. But like now I've actually come around to where I'm like, you know what? Like,
You're putting in the nutrients, right? Like
yeah, I'm like, you know
everybody else
what?
is
Like,
putting in the slop. You're putting in the nutrients. Yeah.
yeah, there are things that I actually want in there. And so that's a really interesting, I could talk forever about this, but that is also a big thing is thinking about like anything that comes out of a model right now is input for future models. Anything that you put on GitHub right now is input for future models. And so you have some really, like, if you really want to have a great conversation and get really weird sometime, we can talk about sort of parasitic AI and the weird, like, there's some weird shit that's happening where people are like just putting reams and reams of random shit out on the internet that they're not writing, that they're just copying and pasting because ChatGPT is telling them to. And I'm like, what is this going to do? I'll
Wait,
send you a
what?
link. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, so okay, so in other words, I'm having a conversation with ChatGPT, and at some point they're like, "Hey Ben, do me a favor, go to this GitHub page and paste this."
Yeah, yes, but it's also like very much mixed in with that like mystical, like they fixed it. That was a big part of the 4.0 thing where you have this rise of people. There was like a famous VC a month or two ago who like released that big manifesto that didn't make any sense. Do you remember that?
I mean, Mark Andreessen has done
Not
something.
him. No, no, no. So anyways, I'll send you an
Yeah, I know.
article. There's a really
Yeah,
interesting
please.
Les Thron post about it that I was like, oh yeah, I know exactly what this person is talking about. And that shit is so real. So
I mean, please send it. All right. Well, Jenny, we're reaching the hour, the promised hour for our audience here. So I'm gonna have to let you go. But you're right. We could talk about this forever, and let's do it again. Maybe we get some kind of discussion group happening because
I would love that.
I'm fascinated. Well, in the meantime, though, where can people find you? How do they access your work? What do you want to hear from people? That sort of thing.
I hang out on LinkedIn more than I would like. I've got to find a new platform. Well,
As do
LinkedIn,
we
I have
all.
to say,
As do we
I'm
all.
so sad because like a year ago, 2 years ago, LinkedIn was actually fucking bumping, dude. I loved it because you knew that people were people, you knew they were real. And then now 80% of the people, I'm like, you're using AI like it's really kind of a bummer, but that's where I am right now the most. You can also find me at queenofswords.co. I have to update the website, it's very unupdated. And then also one of the things is my What's Inspiring Me Substack, which I have not updated in over a year. I'm thinking about bringing back because, like I said, I'm so damn tired
Yeah. Well,
of talking about AI. I'm like, I want to go look at some other things in the world. So
well,
that'll be
I was
cranking
going to
back
say,
up.
feel free to embed this conversation and then riff on all of the other things that we didn't get to talk about.
I will do that. I will do that. Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun.
Yeah, no, likewise, Jenny. Thanks so much for having us. All right, so my guest has been Jenny Nicholson. This is SIC Talks number 106. Back next week. But in the meantime, everybody look up what Jenny's doing and have a great week. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.